For a long time, millions of people believed that living the faith was simply about praying, going to church, and trying to be a better person. But Padre Pio saw something that almost no one noticed: a silent error, small as a spark, but strong enough to extinguish the spiritual light even of the most religious people. And it is precisely here that the revelation that changed the lives of many people begins. Imagine someone thinking they are on the right path, repeating the same words every day, but without realizing that their heart no longer follows their words. Padre Pio said that this was the most dangerous point, when faith becomes habit, not transformation. And that is exactly what almost no one realizes. The question he asked, and which goes unnoticed even today, is simple but deeply affecting. Do you speak with God, or do you just repeat words? This doubt sent shivers down the spines of even the most devout, because it's impossible not to look inward afterward. What if this mistake is happening to you right now, without you even realizing it? Father Pio didn't say this to scare people, but to warn them. He saw, with frightening clarity, when a person was trapped in this automatic mode, living a soulless faith, like a clock repeating movements without understanding why. And this is where the most surprising part begins. He discovered this error within simple, routine confessions that anyone could make. While many simply listed their sins, Pio paid attention to what no one else saw: the intention behind each word. And that's when he realized something so serious that it completely changed the way he guided the faithful. If you think you already know what that mistake is, wait. What Padre Pio revealed is much deeper, much more common, and much more relevant today than you imagine. And when you discover it, everything will start to make sense. Want to understand why? Then continue. The most important part starts now. It all began on an ordinary day in the confessional, one of those days when Padre Pio spent hours listening to people of all ages, stories and backgrounds. Nothing indicated that anything different would happen there. But it was precisely on that day that he perceived the first sign of a spiritual error that until then no one had noticed. A woman approached, knelt down, and began to confess her sins as she always did. It was a quick, memorized list, spoken almost like someone repeating a school assignment. But something caught Padre Pio's attention so strongly that he never forgot it. He realized that the words came from her mouth, but not from her heart. It was as if she were saying everything out of obligation, without thinking, without feeling, without truly repenting. And it was at that moment that Padre Pio felt an inner tightness that he described as a wound that is not seen, but that hurts the soul. This realization unsettled him. How could someone confess without truly opening up? How could someone talk about mistakes without being willing to change? He understood that this was not just an isolated case. It was something bigger, something that was happening to many people, perhaps even to most. And this is where the first impact comes in for anyone listening to this story. Have you ever done this without realizing it? Father Pio began to observe the details, the tone of voice, the hurried manner, the inattentive gaze. And then he realized that the problem wasn't the list of sins, but the lack of sincerity hidden behind it. The woman expected to leave with a clear conscience, but she hadn't opened her heart for even a second. This triggered an alert in Father Pio that would change his way of guiding forever. For him, confession was not a formality. It was a real encounter between the wounded soul and God's mercy. Therefore, when he saw someone treating this moment as a simple, obligatory ritual, he understood that something was profoundly wrong. And that's when the first great sign appeared. Automatic faith was killing true faith. That day marked the beginning of a discovery that would only become clearer in the following episodes, because Padre Pio realized that it wasn't one person or another. It was a silent movement growing inside people without them realizing it. After that first sign that caught his attention, Padre Pio began to observe each person who approached the confessional with even greater care. And it was then that something extraordinary began to happen. He understood things that no one told him. It wasn't just the sin that the faithful confessed. It was what remained hidden between the words, in the silences, in the averted eyes, in the voice that trembled inside. Many say that Padre Pio had the gift of reading consciences, and real stories confirm this. People who tried to hide something, lie, or even soften the truth were surprised when he said exactly what they were trying to omit. But what was most impressive wasn't the fact that he knew about sin. It was what he saw beyond it. He perceived the inner intention, the true motivation, that which the mouth did not speak but the heart cried out. And this completely changed his way of guiding people. For Padre Pio, the listed sin was not the main problem. The real problem was what led a person to always fall into the same errors, the hidden weakness, the silent indifference, the lack of sincerity with God. Sometimes someone would arrive with a long list of sins, but with a humble and repentant heart. And then he would be sweet, welcoming, consoling, and give hope. Other times, someone would arrive with a minor sin, but with a closed heart, almost indifferent. And it was in these cases that Padre Pio became firm, direct, and even severe. This shocked many people, but he would say, "It's not the size of the sin, but the size of the repentance." This unusual discernment led people to realize something. Padre Pio saw souls as one sees a light from within. He knew when someone was truly striving for change and when they were merely repeating formalities. And this explained why he had such different reactions to such different people. For example, there are accounts of people who tried to deceive him, saying they had nothing serious to confess. And he, calmly and firmly, revealed exactly what they were hiding, not to humiliate them, but to set them free. Other times people came sad, afraid, thinking that God would not forgive them. And Padre Pio saw in them such great sincerity that he wept with them, saying that God was already closer than they imagined. This shows how far beyond the surface he could see. He perceived the root, the soul, the truth. And it was precisely this ability that led him to realize that something very serious was happening in people's hearts. A silent, spiritual error growing unnoticed. A problem that didn't appear in visible sin, but within each person. And now that he was seeing this pattern repeating itself, he knew. He needed to act before it was too late, because what came next would show that this error was spreading everywhere, and almost no one noticed. As the days passed, Padre Pio began to notice something that increasingly troubled him. It wasn't a specific sin, not a great evil, not something immediately obvious. It was a mistake so subtle that it spread like smoke, silent, light, almost invisible, but suffocating. He realized that many people were living their faith as if following a mechanical routine. They prayed because they always prayed, went to church because it was the right thing to do, confessed because it was the custom. But something essential was missing: the heart. This was the spiritual error that grew unnoticed. Faith was becoming a habit, not transformation. Words were becoming sounds, not feelings. Prayer was becoming an obligation, not an encounter. And Padre Pio knew that this was far more dangerous than any visible sin, because it corroded the soul from within, without the person realizing it. He said that this type of error was like a fog that slowly enters, spreads throughout the entire house, and when you realize it, you are already breathing smoke without knowing where it comes from. Many people believed they were doing well spiritually simply because they maintained their religious practices. But Padre Pio saw something different. He saw people who performed the gesture but did not live the meaning. He saw eyes that repeated the rosary but expressed no connection. He saw hands that crossed in prayer while the mind wandered to 1,000 worries. He saw confessions without repentance and communions without gratitude. It was a silent disconnection. The person continued to do everything right on the outside, but inside they were empty. This spiritual error for him was more serious than succumbing to temptation because it stemmed from indifference. The heart grew cold, faith gradually faded, and the person didn't even realize it. Everything seemed normal, but in Padre Pio's spiritual eyes, this was a warning of danger. He said that the greatest risk to the soul is not sinning. It's losing sensitivity. It's when nothing touches you anymore. Nothing moves you. Nothing awakens you. When faith becomes a checklist, the soul begins to die slowly. And the worst part, this mistake was spreading everywhere, like smoke seeping through cracks no one sees. Young people, adults, the elderly, everyone was being affected, not out of malice, but out of distraction. The world was becoming faster, noisier, more full of worries, and little by little the sacred was ceasing to be a priority and becoming just another item in the routine. That is why Padre Pio decided to act. He knew that if this error continued to grow, it would end up extinguishing the spiritual fire of many people. And it is precisely here that everything begins to take on a clearer form. He realized that this problem was not just personal, it was collective. And what he would do next would surprise many people who thought they already knew what it meant to live the faith. After realizing that this spiritual error was growing like invisible smoke in people's hearts, Padre Pio understood that he could no longer just observe. It was time to act. And that's when he made a decision that would completely change the course of many faithful lives. A firm, unexpected, and for some even shocking decision. He became extremely clear and direct in the confessional. He no longer accepted confessions made without sincerity, nor repentances uttered insincerely. If a person came there only to fulfill their obligation, he understood immediately. And when he realized this, he didn't hesitate. He sent the person home to reflect, to truly pray, and only then return. This attitude surprised those accustomed to gentle priests who accepted any word as repentance. But Padre Pio knew that if confession didn't come from the heart, it wouldn't change anything. And if it didn't change anything, the person would remain trapped in that spiritual error that had been growing silently. He said that confession was like a cure. If the patient doesn't want to be cured, the medicine has no effect. And he refused to give medicine to those who didn't truly want to get better. Some people were hurt, others were indignant, others didn't even understand what they were doing wrong. But Padre Pio didn't let himself be influenced by the reactions. He knew he was fighting for something greater, the spiritual awakening of these souls. He wanted them to realize how serious it was to live a half-hearted faith without depth, without truth. And if awakening someone required firmness, he would be firm. Accounts from that time show that many people, after being corrected by Padre Pio, returned completely transformed. They cried, reflected, and understood that they could not live an automatic, empty spirituality. Instead of distancing themselves, they returned seeking sincerity, seeking a real connection with God. It was as if Padre Pio's firmness had broken a hard shell that hid their hearts. This decision created a chain reaction. People began to realize that something very serious was happening. It wasn't just about confessing sins. It was about awakening the soul. It was about not living on spiritual autopilot. Padre Pio was trying to pull each person out of the smoke of mechanical routine and bring them back to the living fire of faith. And that's precisely why this decision marked the beginning of a profound change, not only for those who sought him out, but for the entire community around him. But what he would do next would be even more impactful, because it came directly from a spiritual revelation that few were prepared to hear. Many people who only knew Padre Pio from brief stories thought he was severe because he had a difficult temperament. But those who lived with him and observed him closely knew the truth. His firmness didn't come from harshness. It came from love, a love so profound for souls that he couldn't bear to see someone lost through carelessness or indifference. And that was precisely the reason that almost no one knew. For Padre Pio, Treating faith as an empty habit was like leaving an open wound untreated, and he knew that the longer that wound remained untreated, the harder it would be to heal it later. That's why, when he saw someone confessing without repentance, praying without attention, receiving communion without awareness, his heart ached, not out of judgment but out of pain. The reason for his severity was linked to something much deeper. He saw the spiritual consequences that the person did not see. While the believer thought everything was fine, he could see inside what it was causing: a weakened, extinguished, distant soul. He said that spiritual indifference is like a silent disease. The person continues walking, working, living normally, but inside they lose strength, light, and brightness. And when they realize it, they no longer feel anything. This feeling nothing was what worried Padre Pio the most. He asserted that when the soul becomes accustomed to God, it ceases to perceive his presence. And this was the true danger, not the great visible sin, not the occasional slip, but this inner coldness that slowly takes hold. He saw this coldness in many who approached him, kind, religious, dedicated people, but empty inside, not out of malice, but through repetition. They had the gesture, but not the heart, and that is why Padre Pio became so firm. He knew that if he didn't awaken these people, they would end up turning away from God without even realizing it. He knew that if he didn't break that automatic cycle, their faith would become just a ritual. And a soulless ritual for him was one of the worst spiritual traps. That is precisely why his severity was in fact proof of love. He wanted to shake things up, awaken them, rekindle them. He wanted each person to feel again the warmth of true faith, the kind that transforms, that heals, that touches the heart. And often, this awakening only happened when he was direct, firm, even harsh. But what truly made everything meaningful was a profound spiritual vision that Padre Pio had, a vision that showed what this error was causing in the world and in people's souls. And when you understand this vision, you will realize why he fought so hard against this problem that seemed so small. It was after so many empty confessions, so many lifeless eyes, and so many words spoken without heart that Padre Pio received a vision that completely changed how he viewed that silent spiritual error. He was in deep prayer, in one of those moments when he seemed to see more of heaven than of the earth itself, when something began to reveal itself before him. He recounted seeing people walking like shadows, even though they were alive. They weren't motionless bodies, they were souls, without light. They walked slowly, as if searching for something and never finding it. Each step seemed heavy, as if they were dragging invisible chains. And the most frightening thing, many of them didn't even perceive their own darkness. Father Pio understood that this vision was not symbolic, it was real. It was what was happening inside the many hearts he attended to every day. In that image, what impressed him most was not the suffering of the souls, but their indifference. They continued, walking, living, talking, working, carrying out their routines, but inside them there was an emptiness so profound that it seemed like a bottomless pit. He described this as the silent death of the soul. And there, in that vision, he understood the root of the problem. The spiritual error didn't begin with a great sin, nor with a great fall. It began with something much smaller: distraction. The person prayed but didn't pay attention. They went to Mass but thought about other things. They confessed without reflecting. And this small distraction, repeated every day, gradually extinguished the inner light, like a flame that loses oxygen, until the soul became like those shadows he saw, alive on the outside, empty on the inside. Father Pio wept upon understanding this, because he realized that this error was spreading like a spiritual disease that no one detected. It was like a poison hidden in daily routine, weakening people without them noticing. In this vision, he also saw that God did not distance himself from souls. It was they who, little by little, ceased to perceive him. And this was even more painful for him, knowing that many believed they were close to God simply by repeating religious gestures, when in reality their hearts were already far away. This revelation explained why he felt such urgency. It explained his firmness, his harsh corrections, his silent tears after some confessions. He wasn't just dealing with individual sins, he was confronting a darkness that spread inside people and that they didn't even realize. It was at that moment that he became fully aware of the mission he needed to accomplish, to awaken souls before they turned into shadows. And what he discovered next, an invisible sign that identified exactly who was falling into this error, would make his struggle even clearer. After witnessing souls walking like shadows, Padre Pio began to observe something that, to ordinary eyes, seemed completely insignificant. But for him it was the invisible sign that revealed who was already being affected by that silent spiritual error. He said that even before a person opened their mouth, even before confessing or praying, there was a detail that gave everything away. The way the person spoke to God, not the content of the prayer, but the heart behind it. For Padre Pio, a lack of attention during prayer was like a crack in the soul. He could tell when someone prayed automatically, repeating words like someone reading a label. And that's what saddened him most, realizing that the person was physically present, but spiritually distant. Often, he saw someone making the sign of the cross quickly, as if pressing a button. He saw people reciting memorized prayers, but without soul. Their mouths moved, but their hearts didn't follow. That was the invisible symptom, prayer without presence. He said that prayer that doesn't come from the heart doesn't reach heaven. Not because God ignores it, but because the person isn't truly present in that moment. And this creates an inner barrier that becomes increasingly difficult to break through. Father Pio had such a great sensitivity to this that he would often interrupt someone's prayer and say, "Begin again, but now speak to God as if he were before you." And when the person obeyed, something would change immediately. Their voice would become softer, their eyes would fill with emotion, their breathing would calm down. It was as if their heart finally awakened, he explained. That insincerity in prayer wasn't something that started suddenly. It was a slow process. First, a person prays distractedly one day, then another and another. When they realize it, prayer has become a soulless habit. And it is at this point that spiritual error begins to gain strength. He said that this invisible symptom was the first step towards the inner darkness he saw in the vision. For him, this problem was even more dangerous because it wasn't accompanied by external signs. No one saw it, no one commented on it, no one suspected anything, but internally the soul began to lose sensitivity. The person stopped feeling peace, stopped feeling joy, stopped feeling the presence of God. Everything became gray, cold, heavy. This symptom was so common that Padre Pio said that almost everyone, at some point in their lives, ran the risk of falling into it. But he also said that recognizing this was the first step to avoiding something much more serious. And precisely for this reason, he began to teach a simple, profound remedy capable of rekindling the soul of even the most spiritually weary people. And this remedy is so powerful that when you discover it, you will understand why so many people changed their lives after listening to Padre Pio. After identifying the invisible symptom that revealed a sleeping heart, Padre Pio knew that it wasn't enough to simply warn people. He needed to offer a real path, a simple and direct remedy to rekindle people's souls. And this is where one of the most beautiful parts of his teachings emerges. Unlike what many imagined, the remedy wasn't complicated. It didn't require special formulas, nor long penances. Padre Pio always began by saying something that dismantled any resistance. Speak to God as you would speak to someone you love. That was the first step. He explained that prayer only comes back to life when it ceases to be a memorized text and becomes a conversation. He said that God doesn't want beautiful words. He wants sincerity. And for those who were spiritually asleep, sincerity was the alarm clock. Padre Pio recommended that people open their hearts as if talking to a friend, saying what they feel, what they fear, what they desire, what they don't understand. He wanted people to place themselves before God with the same truth with which a child places themselves before a father. The second step was just as important as the first. Speak less and listen more. Many were surprised when, after a long prayer, Padre Pio would say, "Now be silent." He explained that the soul is rekindled through listening, not noise. Silence for him was like an open window through which grace enters, and those who were spiritually weary needed this silence to breathe again. The third step was even simpler yet profound. Perform small acts of love throughout the day, not grand sacrifices, not heroic gestures. Small things like being patient with someone difficult, helping without being asked, offering a smile, forgoing a complaint. He said that these small acts were like sparks that rekindled the inner fire. Many people would return after a few days and say, "Father, it seems that something inside me has awakened." And he would reply, "The soul awakens where there is love." Finally, Padre Pio taught something that few expected to hear. Don't be afraid to acknowledge your weakness. He asserted that the soul only grows when it knows it needs to be cared for. Showing God what hurts, what fails, what is lacking. That for him was the greatest act of spiritual courage, because that is how the heart becomes true again. This simple remedy began to transform people who arrived exhausted, sad, and empty. It was as if a light slowly began to ignite within them, illuminating what was previously dark. Padre Pio saw this with joy and said that anyone, even the most spiritually weary, could be reborn if they followed these steps sincerely. But not everyone accepted this remedy easily. There were those who resisted, who wanted to continue living on autopilot, who did not want to face their inner truth. And it was precisely to these people that Padre Pio revealed a very serious consequence of this spiritual error, something that would forever change the way many viewed faith. Father Pio always said that God never abandons anyone, but the soul can gradually drift away from God without realizing it. And that is exactly what happened to those who fell into that silent spiritual error. The person didn't wake up one day saying, "I'm going to turn away from the faith." No, it was much more subtle, almost imperceptible, like a candle that slowly goes out without anyone seeing the flame diminish. Father Pio explained that the first consequence of this error was a strange emptiness. It's a feeling that something is missing even when everything seems normal in a person's life. They work, talk, relax, but inside there's a void that nothing can fill. He said that this emptiness is the first warning, that the heart is losing its spiritual sensitivity. After that came something even more worrying, constant discouragement. The person begins to lose interest in things that once brought peace. Praying becomes tiresome. Going to church becomes a burden. Hearing about God seems distant. They don't realize it, but their soul is growing weak, just like a body that stops eating. The third consequence is the most dangerous, a freezer interior. Father Pio described this state as an icy fog that envelops the heart. The person still says they believe in God, still maintains some habits, but no longer feels anything. They feel no joy in praying, no true repentance, no presence, no light. It's as if they are alive on the outside, but asleep on the inside. And this indifference, he said, is more deadly than many visible sins. And it doesn't stop there. Padre Pio also explained that this inner coldness opens the door to a profound sadness. It's not clinical depression, it's a sadness of the soul, a feeling that life has lost its flavor. Many people who sought him out said, "Father, I don't know how to explain it. It's as if nothing makes sense." And he, with his spiritual sensitivity, knew that this sadness came from a disconnected heart. It wasn't a lack of faith, it was a lack of inner life. Another consequence he mentioned was constant confusion. The person begins to feel lost, directionless, without clarity. Right and wrong become blurred. They no longer know what God wants, nor what they themselves want. It's like walking in a fog, groping in the dark. Padre Pio said that a soul that lives without spiritual depth loses its compass. And finally, the most serious consequence of all, a person ceases to recognize grace when it arrives. God sends signs, consolations, opportunities for change, but the heart is so asleep that it doesn't perceive anything. It's like someone who receives a gift but lacks the sensitivity to open it. These consequences explain why Padre Pio was so firm, so insistent, so determined to awaken souls. He knew where this silent error led, not to divine punishment, but to inner suffering that the person themselves created without realizing it. And it is precisely because of these consequences that Padre Pio began to speak of something even greater, how this spiritual error affected not only individuals, but also the whole of society. What follows will open the eyes of many people. Father Pio knew that spiritual error didn't remain confined within a single person. It spread, it grew, it passed from one heart to another like a silent disease, and when many people began to live their faith automatically, without soul, without depth, something even more worrying happened. The entire society was beginning to lose its sense of the sacred. This is more serious than it seems. He explained that a society that forgets the sacred not only becomes less religious, it becomes colder, emptier, more violent, more lost. The first collective effect was their normalization of indifference. People stopped truly caring about each other. Gestures of kindness diminished, compassion became rare, and relationships grew superficial. People lived together physically, but were spiritually distant. It was as if each person built their own bubble, forgetting that there is a soul within every person they meet. The second effect was telos of moral direction. Father Pio said that when the human heart no longer feels God, it loses its bearings. Choices begin to be made on impulse, not by conscience. What was wrong becomes seen as normal, and what was right becomes seen as exaggeration. It's like putting a broken compass in the hands of a crowd. Everyone thinks they're going the right way, but no one realizes the path is crooked. The third effect was the widespread lack of inner peace. He observed that when many people lived with an asleep heart, the surrounding environment changed. Families argued more. Couples drifted apart without clear reason. Children grew up amidst arguments. Societies lost dialogue. It was as if the whole world was always irritated, impatient, tired. Padre Pio said, "When the heart turns away from heaven, the earth becomes too heavy." Another collective effect, which he mentioned with a sad voice, was the spiritual coldness in communities. The churches were becoming more crowded, but less filled with faith. People participated in rituals, but did not live the spirituality. Communion ceased to be an encounter and became a habit. Forgiveness ceased to be liberation and became a formula. He saw this as a clear sign that society was entering a state of profound spiritual slumber. And the worst part was what came next. The loss of meaning in life. When the soul doesn't feel God, it tries to fill the void with other things. Excessive consumption, endless distractions, addictions, appearances, status. But none of that solves the problem. None of that heals. None of that fills the void. Padre Pio said that a society that loses the sacred ends up becoming a society that no longer knows why it exists. That was why he fought so hard. It wasn't just for the individual faith of the people who sought him out. It was for everyone's future. He knew that if this error continued to spread, the world would become an increasingly dark place. And to awaken this sleeping society, he began to reveal something even deeper, where this error truly originated. And when he explained this, everything became clear, as if it were the missing key to understanding the inner darkness he saw in souls. For Padre Pio, understanding the source of that spiritual error was as important as combating its consequences. He said that no heart falls asleep overnight, no soul suddenly grows cold. There is always an origin, a small, almost invisible but decisive point. And when he finally explained where this error comes from, everything made sense, as if the last piece of a puzzle finally fell into place. Padre Pio asserted that spiritual error begins with something that every human being carries within themselves, the desire to control everything, even God. Yes, that's right. He said that, fundamentally, the root of the problem lies in the moment when a person tries to fit God into their routine instead of fitting their life into God's will. Faith becomes something to fulfill, a task, an agenda, an obligation. And that's when everything starts to fall apart. According to Padre Pio, when a person thinks they already know how to pray, already know what God wants, already know how they should act, they stop listening. They close their heart and open space for a spiritual ego, small and silent, but dangerous. This ego makes the person believe they are doing well just because they maintain religious habits. But the heart at that moment has already begun to drift away. He explained it in a very simple way. It's like someone who learns a song and after repeating it so many times, no longer pays attention to the melody. They sing automatically. The lyrics come out, but the emotion doesn't. The same thing happens with faith. Prayer becomes routine. Mass becomes a habit. Confession becomes a list. The person thinks they are spiritual, when in reality they are just repeating empty gestures. And Padre Pio identified another element in this route by modern life, even back then, already left people agitated, tired, and rushed. And when haste enters the heart, God ends up being placed in last place. Not out of malice, but because the person believes they can always talk to him later. But that later keeps turning into tomorrow, then next week. And when they realize it, months or years have already passed. The soul becomes dry, but the person thinks it's just tiredness. Another point that Padre Pio emphasized was the fear of facing one's own inner truth. He said that many people preferred a light, superficial faith that didn't require real change, because change hurts. Change requires touching areas of the soul that have been ignored for a long time. So, instead of opening their hearts, people protect themselves with automatic behaviors, memorized phrases, and thoughtless rituals. This combination, control, haste, fear, and superficiality, was, for Padre Pio, the root of the spiritual error that was spreading throughout the world. He clearly saw that more and more people were living a faith imprisoned in appearances without inner exploration. And that is why he felt such an urgent need to awaken souls before it was too late. But Padre Pio didn't just explain the origin of this error. He went further. He revealed a profound, concrete, and transformative method to free anyone from this state of spiritual indifference. Something that, according to him, could rekindle even the coldest soul. And when you discover this method, everything you've seen so far will make even more sense. Father Pio knew that understanding spiritual error was not enough. It was necessary to correct it. And to that end, he created a method so simple and powerful that it transformed the lives of thousands of people who sought him out. The most impressive thing is that anyone of any age can apply this method, even a child. He said that the soul awakens not through complications, but through sincerity. And that is why his teaching began with the most important step, back to basics. The first step was this: pray with your heart, not with your mouth. Father Pio repeated this so often that it became almost his spiritual signature. For him, prayer was not a set of phrases, but an encounter. He taught people to pray slowly, attentively, speaking to God as if they were talking to someone very dear. He said that if a person prayed just one phrase with sincerity, it had more value than praying an entire book without soul. Sincerity was what awakened the heart. The second step was true confession. not the kind of confession done out of habit, but the kind born from the courage to look within oneself. Padre Pio said that confession wasn't about listing sins, but about surrendering wounds. He guided each believer to speak of their struggles, weaknesses, fears and falls with complete honesty. He knew that when a person opens up without masks, God touches the root of the problem and begins to heal the inner self. The third step was the most practical: small acts of love throughout the day. He taught that the soul is reborn in the details, in a gesture of patience, in helping someone without expecting anything in return, in forgiving when it hurts, in avoiding harsh words. Padre Pio said that each small act is a flame lit, and when several flames come together, the heart shines again. That was how a person recovered their spiritual sensitivity. The fourth step was the most challenging: allow yourself to change. Many people wanted to feel God's presence, but didn't want to give up habits that distanced them from Him. Padre Pio said that the soul only grows when it accepts transformation, even if it is uncomfortable at first. He reminded us that God works within us, gently but firmly. And when a person lets God act, even the coldest parts begin to warm up. Finally, he taught something that seemed simple, but that many ignored. Cultivate inner silence. Father Pio said that God speaks in silence. And when a person creates small moments of silence throughout the day, a few seconds upon waking, a minute before sleeping, a moment of pause amidst the rush, the heart begins to hear again what was previously muffled by haste. This set of steps formed the method that awakened souls, rekindled hearts, restored peace, and gave meaning. And thousands of testimonies over the years show that when someone follows these steps, the change is real. The soul, once weary, begins to breathe again. Faith, once automatic, comes back to life. But Padre Pio didn't stop there. After showing how to correct the error, he revealed the final, most profound lesson, the one that ties together everything he taught and shows why this message is so important for today. And this final lesson can completely change the way you look at your faith. After explaining the origin of spiritual error, its consequences, and the path to awakening the heart, Padre Pio left one last lesson, the most important of all. He said that in the end, the entire spiritual life boils down to a single question: is your heart alive? That question, as simple as a drop of water, had the power to destroy entire walls within the soul. Because no matter how many prayers someone says, how many masses they attend, or how many rituals they practice, if the heart is asleep, nothing flourishes. Father Pio wanted people to understand that faith is not made of habits, but of inner life. It's not about doing, it's about being. It's not about repeating words, it's about feeling God walking within us. He taught that the spiritual error that almost no one notices arises when a person loses this awareness and begins to live on autopilot, like a machine that functions but doesn't feel. And that is precisely what he most wanted to avoid. His final lesson was clear: faith needs to be cultivated every day, not with great effort, but with small truths, with sincerity, with presence, with love. He said that when the heart awakens, everything around it changes. The person begins to feel peace again, simple joy, true hope. And this transformation is so profound that even those who live with them notice the difference. Father Pio used to say, "An awakened soul illuminates others." He believed that when a person rekindles their inner light, that light spreads to their family, friends, and community. And that is how spiritual error is overcome, not with speeches, but with living souls. Therefore, his final message was not one of fear, but of invitation. Awaken your heart. Allow yourself to truly feel God. Return to the essentials. Return to love. Because when the heart comes back to life, everything around it is reborn. And that's what makes the entire journey you've been on finally make sense. If this message touched your heart, write in the comments, "I want to awaken spiritually and continue this journey." The path is only just beginning.
Hear the true prophetic message.